Couple of guys hoping that the second time is the charm in their second time out in the UFC. I mean, what other types of second time out, second time's the charm action have you seen, Matt? Like, I can think of, like, the Ford Ranger when they reintroduced it to North America. Everybody got excited. Now you see a lot of them out on the road. There was,
Too Fast, Too Furious, one of the greatest sequels in cinema history.
I was gonna say the live action Scooby-Doo #2, like, they tried to convince 10-year-old me that it was gonna be as good as the first one, because the first one had Sugar Ray and Melvin Dew. So, listen, that one was exciting, but if you do look at it this weekend, both of these guys in Israel's Natan Levy and Mike Breeden came in on short notice, replacing a couple of fighters. So, Natan Levy, if you look at it, fought Rafa Garcia. Somewhat unimpressive. I mean, the craziest part about Natan Levy is he is a great karate fighter. He does not win fights by knockout. He wins by submission or decision. Has no knockout wins on his record. And for Mike Breeden, he either knocks people out or he gets knocked out. And when he came in on short notice to take on Alexandr Hernandez, replacing Leonardo Santos on a fight that was announced September 24th to fight on October 2nd, so you have less than a week to take on Alexandr Hernandez, the significant strikes were 20-6 in favor of Hernandez, and he knocked him out in 1 minute and 20 seconds. So Mike Breeden looking to pick up the pieces here.
This is a weird fight because it really will test the karate of Natan Levy and see how good of a counter-striker he is. Because anytime you're fighting a guy like Mike Breeden, that's basically the question. Can you effectively counter some of his flurries and some of his aggression while he is trying to get his distance and land some of his big power punches? And with Levy, it is interesting because he does fight with that karate style, but he does go for quite a few takedowns and he will try to work his overall grappling game. I just think he's going to have to use his movement quite a bit in this fight, and especially early on, because the Levy that we saw the last time out, I don't know if he has enough power on the feet to really hurt Breeden enough just for one shot for a shot's sake. And I really do think it's a dangerous fight for Levy if he does have stationary feet, because if he finds himself in the middle of the cage just trading combinations with Mike Breeden, he's going to get he's going to get knocked out. And it's probably going to look really, really bad too. So I do think if Levy can come into this trying to be the mixed martial artist and actually use his wrestling, it will look good, but that's the problem with Levy. I don't really know how much I trust any of his individual skills for what they are. I don't know how good of a chance he can go out there and just get a takedown when he really needs one. I don't know if he can just rely on his karate to win a 15-minute fight. So I think for Levy, I honestly think winning a decision would be the best case for him, because then it would let everybody know what you're really about and what kind of skills you have been working on, because I don't know if he can win this fight solely on the feet. I don't know if he can win this fight solely with his takedowns. Now, I do think he will have a decided advantage with his grappling when he is able to get this down to the ground. And the thing with Mike Breeden is, I just don't know if his gas tank's going to be there up against Natan Levy if it is a grappling heavy fight as this fight progresses. On the feet, I do think they can probably have similar cardio with their striking, but I do think that Levy's gas tank is just so much more used to him using his wrestling that he will be able to pull away if he is fighting a grappling centric fight.
It's not, something that you see very often when you have a heavily muscled fighter that actually has a halfway decent gas tank, like Natan Levy has shown in the past. If you look at it, majority decision win over Ben Lugo. He's got a decision win over Nick Battis, over Henry Barahona, And then apart from that, some finishes. A nice one over Shaheen Santana on Dana White's Contender Series 2020. Had quite a bit of a layoff. He was supposed to take on Austin Hubbard in April of last year. Wasn't able to make it to that one. So realistically, you look at it, takes on Rafa Garcia. I mean, you remember what Rafa Garcia did to, fellow Canadian Jesse Ronson a couple of weeks ago? It was absolutely wild. But again, I look at this fight as Mike Breeden. He struggled against some grapplers in the past. He struggled against Anthony Romero, who has a fight coming up this week. And in that fight on Dana White's Contender Series, in August of 2020, he loses that fight 30-26, 30-27, 29-28. Many among us, including fellow Canadians, were surprised that Romero did not get the contract in that one. But for Money Breeden, it's weird, because if you look at just a highlight reel of Mike Breeden, you're going to get excited on a Sunday morning to watch one of his fights. I'll tell you that much right now. Like the win that he has over Brandon Jenkins, who's in the UFC, the flying knee in the third round, just all the way across the cage, like just going, well, bam. It is a lot of fun to see. Brandon Jenkins hasn't been all that impressive in the UFC. Realistically, the Jakar Close fight and the one against Rongju, he gets finished, but it was cool. And then Brandon Jenkins went and took his finishing move and did it to, Jacob Kilburn with the PFL. So I look at this one, 8 of 10 of Breeden's wins are by knockout, and The other one that's kind of weird, and I really put too much stock into this one, but loses the first round against a short notice Nick Compton back at FAC 8 to earn his shot into taking on Alexander Hernandez. The 39-year-old Nick Compton, 12-8, gets taken down, gets out-grappled, then he comes back and he wins the second round, he wins the third round. But it really is odd. I mean, Breeden, MMA boxer if I've ever seen one, not a ton of kicks, and really does like to push a pace.
This is the way that I look at that Compton fight, though. If you're Nick Compton, you're 36 being brought in on short notice.
39.
You're gonna go for it immediately in the first round and give it everything you have. And that's exactly what he did in that fight. So I don't look at that being a massive negative for Breeden. You were fighting a guy who knew he only had one round in him, so he just kind of went for it in that one round.
Man went for it.
He certainly did, but I just think this is a really dangerous fight for Natan Levy. If you think he's going to use his karate in this, but if you have watched him fight, you know that's probably not going to be the case. And I do think that once he is able to mix it up and use his wrestling, his gas tank really will be the X factor in this matchup. Breeden has huge punching power, and the thing is, if he goes to the body a lot early, maybe he is able to weaken that cardio of Levy and make it a little bit more even as the fight goes on. But I really do think that Levy, he might not be able to secure every takedown, but even with the clinch control on some of those 50-50s, he's going to be keeping his own head out of trouble and he won't be eating damage, and that's just going to help him as this fight progresses.
Mike Breeden, another fighter on this card representing Glory MMA and Fitness like Danger Gina Mazany, but not like Grant Dawson, who's also on this one. And Natan Levy out of Syndicate MMA. A lot of comparables for Mike Breeden that train at Syndicate MMA, and a lot of guys that can really accentuate Levy's ground game as well, because just like Roy Nelson, he is also a Kung Fu black belt in addition to that Karate black belt. If you look at the odds for this one, Levy open to minus 240, favorite minus 221 right now for Mike Breeden, open to plus 205, plus 178. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us, they are to you. I'm going to say over under 80% Levy.
I'll say under.
You're going to say under, listen, 544 total votes, 90% Levy, 77% by decision for the 10% that are Breeden, 65% by decision for a guy who has 80% of his wins by knockout. Money Mike Breeden, Matt. So what are you saying here?
I think Levy by decision is probably a safe pick on this one, just because he does have good wrestling. He doesn't get hit all that clean all that often, and that's really the big thing if you're fighting a guy like Mike Breeden. If you're hittable, you're going to give him the chance to win. If you are a grappling heavy fighter who isn't very hittable, you're probably going to be in a great position to get the win.
Both of us going with Natan Levy in this fight. I agree with you there, and I think when it does come to that ground game, I've seen holes in both guys, especially, takedown defense-wise, but with Mike Breeden, I think Natan Levy is going to have, a better time than he did when he took on Rafa Garcia. So both of us going with Israel's Natan Levy to get the win in this lightweight fight between a couple of prospects. Big time card coming up this weekend in the main event. Ooh boy, Rob Font taking on Marlon Vera. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.